What distracts you the most as a follower of Christ? Oh, we have a lot of distractions. Some we may know of, some we may not even realize that we have, but they're there. This week, we're starting the first of two-part series on weapons of mass distraction. Stay tuned. And we want to welcome you to this week's edition of Living Hope Today. So glad to have you along. If you're tuning in for the very first time, we are grateful that you are watching and that you've taken time out of your busy schedule to join us for this week's edition of Living Hope Today right here on AICTV. I do want to tell you that our program is designed to really reach our native people for Christ. Years ago, in 2009, this is a long time ago, I believe that's when we first started, 2009, 2010, somewhere right in there, we started our broadcast. And I tell you, it was the first one doing something like this where it was total internet-based broadcasting. And the Lord is wonderfully blessed, and we appreciate so many of you who have stayed with us. And even though we've had lots of changes and we've done things a little different here and there, we appreciate you. We're glad that you're a part of this ministry by watching and just being with us. Today we're excited because we are getting ready to start a new series. Now this is only going to be a two-part series. I believe in our prophecy Bible study that we did a while back, it was a four-part series, so it lasted quite a while. But this one is a two-part series, and the content will be a lot shorter on our broadcast, so it's not going to be as long as in previous broadcasts. But this is going to be a study that you're going to really want to watch and share with others if you possibly can. We are talking about distractions in our life. And, you know, as I mentioned at the beginning of this program here today, that I mentioned how some people know what type of distractions distract them from serving the Lord as they should. A lot of it sometimes has to do with things like drinking. Some have a gambling problem. Some are trying to climb the ladder of success, so that becomes the focus. They have no time for God in their lives. Just any number of things. And when you think about all these different things that can be distraction to us, these are things that the devil tries to use to make us take our eyes off Jesus and instead focus on things of the world. That's scary, because once we take our eyes off Jesus, the devil comes in and he will distract us once he knows what we're looking at and what he already knows. And I should tell you this. We've done Bible studies on here before about spiritual warfare. Well, I'll tell you, that's really what this weapon that Satan uses. Distraction is one of them. He uses a lot of weapons, but in this day and age that we live right now, I have never seen so many distractions that keep our eyes off of really serving the Lord, giving Him our all, witnessing, telling others about Christ, going to church. These are all things that I see that the devil has taken away. We think about the television, we think about the TV, the internet. We can think about so many different things that distracts us. Even the news of this world, it is distracting. I told my wife the other day, we were watching the news and I just shut it off. I thought that it's the same thing over and over, and that is distracting to me, a time when I should be with my family and be with my wife and not be distracted by things like that, and especially things of the world. So we're going to discuss that today and also in next week's program. So I encourage you to make sure that you plan to join us today and tomorrow. Well, if you're here, you're watching already, but next week as well, that you'll let people know about it. But I want to thank so many of you for writing. People that we're still getting a response from those who watch the Bible Prophecy series, and I've tried to answer questions that people that asked me about that, and I've tried to put that up for you. So I think we've got some of that answered. But there's so many people that have been writing and sending emails and messages to us, and we appreciate you. We really do, and we appreciate all the people that are watching from around the world. It's amazing to see those of you that are watching from other parts other than North America. And the other day we took a look at our analytics on our broadcaster, and we found out that we were really hitting a lot of different countries around the world. So that's good to see. And I hope that you'll continue to watch. But you know what? Something else I'd like you to do? I'd like you to write us. I'd like you to contact us. And here's some ways that you can connect with us. Look at our Connect page. First, we have our web page. You can see that. And we've been talking about this for a long time, but we are really getting ready to start broadcasting from there as opposed to our Facebook page. But I want you to keep that in mind. But you can contact us any of those ways or get news from us, through either Facebook or we have on there a Twitter account. And we're getting ready to probably do away with the Twitter account as well. Or there's our email. And also, if for those of you like to write us, you can do that right there by just writing us a letter and sending it to us. In fact, we get a lot of mail that way. And a lot of folks are still using mail. So I encourage you, take a moment to drop us a line. Now, today's program, we're going to get going right away, and we have kind of reduced our program, changed our program a little bit, in that we are allowing more time for the message, the study, and reducing just a little bit on the music, but we're not reducing down on who you're going to listen to. Today we have a wonderful friend of ours that has, I've known Jay Cummins for a long time. He's a Cinnabon from way up in Poplar, Montana. And he is a wonderful friend and ministry. He's a pastor now of a church there, the Assembly of God Church on that reservation. We've known him a long time. Well, he has a wonderful talent in ministry of music. And I want you to listen to him right now. He's going to start our program off today with some great music. And he's doing a song, Do You Believe? I want you to listen to the song by Jay Cummins. And we'll start our study as soon as we finish with that song. So stay tuned.
Do you believe in Jesus? only trust when everyone fails you, Jesus. Oh, you can count on Him. Who will help you stand when you get knocked down? God will. Oh, yeah. Do you believe in Jesus? Do you believe in His word? I do. Well, I really do. I stand on His promises. I call out His name. I do. I stand on His promises. I call out His name. I do. I stand on His promises. I call out His name. I do.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that song. I want to reiterate today about what we're going to be talking about. And this is a subject on distraction, distractions in our life. You know, I think about it, the different distractions that we talk about. There could be all sorts of things, as I mentioned a little earlier. We talk about distractions that can really, as Christians, now as believers in Christ, the devil likes to use the distractions to draw us away, our eyes, and take it off the Lord and to look at something else. That's what spiritually distractions are for the Christian. I believe even the non-Christian are constantly attacked with the fact that the devil wants to use distractions as a way to not even get them to look at anything of Christ, whether it's church, whether it's some the distractions are having even Christian friends, because to them they're not able to do the things they want to do comfortably around maybe their Christian friends that they know. So it's a problem in a lot of ways for all mankind, because Satan likes to use the idea of distractions as a way to get our focus off the Lord. So we've entitled this week's message, Weapons of Mass Distraction. Not destruction, distraction. Because we know that the devil uses distraction as a way to get our eyes off the Lord. Well, what is distraction? Let's look at Webster's Dictionary and see what it says. It says here, something that makes it hard to pay attention. The other answer to that is the act of having thoughts or attention drawn away. Wow, I think that's a perfect description of that word, and it applies to what we're going to be talking about in the spiritual sense of a distraction in our spiritual lives. Well, you know, at the beginning of the program, I asked the question, what distracts you as a follower of Christ? What distracts you most? What is it? You know, we are bombarded every day with all sorts of distractions. Every hour, that takes distractions and our intended purposes that we want and pulls us the other direction. It takes us away from it. Can you think of some that maybe you're going through? You know, I think of TV as being probably one of the biggest distractions, because so many people are watching TV all the time. When we come home, what's the first thing we turn on? The TV. When we get up in the morning, sometimes the first thing we turn on after having a cup of coffee is to turn on the TV, watch TV. Another thing, some people in this day and age, especially among young people, TV is not as important as the internet is. So what do? They are on their computers all the time watching the internet, visiting social media sites, and so on. These are some of the things. Then when you think about other maybe distractions would be acquiring success. A lot of people are striving and they'll do whatever it takes to actually achieve success in their lives. Some people run for political office or maybe on the tribal offices in our tribal governments. Maybe it's things like that where it just totally pulls our focus away. Of course, one of the big distractions too is money. I always think of money. I think of sometimes, and you may not look at this as being a distraction, it can be your job. Some people work so hard that they tend to not even really go to church, read their Bibles, stay with their family. They are tied into their job, giving so much time there. And sometimes it's family. Sometimes it is family. We do things with our family. We take off. We don't spend time with the Lord like we should. Well, it's also lots of lifestyles, like I mentioned. Drinking. It could be gambling. It could be pornography. There's lots of different things that takes our eyes off. Another strong one I think of that is so prevalent, especially here in America in the last year, has been politics. Politics has just gone wild here in our country, and it's just gotten worse. And so I think when you think about things like that, politics, well, it really can take you away from a lot of different things. And then there's something else too that is a distraction. And should I even say this? Our culture. Yeah, I said it. You say, well, how's our culture distract us? Well, I can think of a lot of things that we are so proud of our cultural heritage. And in the summer, I remember as we traveled in ministry all throughout North America, it happened in the United States and Canada, wherever you went, summer ministries and churches saw a decline in their Sunday services. And I used to always wonder, well, what is it that people are just not coming to church on Sundays like they used to? And the pastors would say, well, we have great crowds in the fall and the spring. And but when summer gets here, it's totally different. And a lot of it is because a lot of our native people would go to cultural events and activities, powwows and different things like that. Takes them out because powwows are always on the weekends usually. So Sundays, they were there at the powwows rather than being in church. So yes, cultural things can take us away too. It just is used as a distraction if we're not careful. So we need to always put Christ first, to remember that. And these things, if you do not put them aside, these distractions, if you don't try to weed through them, they can become idols. They can become superior things in your life that's all you're going to care about, and only if we allow it. You know, I think about of examples of distractions, and I think one of the biggest distractions are probably our phones, our telephones. That what we have is mobile phones, and boy, they just take our the telephone has revolutionized everything, because now you don't need a computer, you don't need a laptop, you don't need a little tablet. The phone, as small as it is, will actually suffice for all those things. And sometimes the phones are actually more powerful than some of these computers that are out there. Look at this as an example. The average person spends 2 hours a day on social media. The average person cannot go without using their phones for even 10 minutes. And that's using your phone talking on it, but also, most important, going through on the internet with it. Here's another one. 4 in 10 Americans admit they cannot live without their mobile phones. And 82% of Americans cannot leave home without their phones. I think I might be guilty of that one, because if it's not in my pocket, I have to run back in the house and get it. So I understand how important the phone is and how vital it has become in my life, and what a distraction it can become as well. So these are some of the things. The distraction is really a weapon of mass destruction. There's the destruction part. If Satan and his forces keeps you from what God wants you to do, it can lead to destruction. You know, we're not immune to it. This time in our period that we live, this time in history, we can think back to many times when in the Bible, scriptures tell of distractions that really changed a lot of things in the Bible. So the weapon that Satan uses, distraction, goes way back. And guess how far it goes back? Well, Genesis records perhaps the first distraction to ever appear before mankind. That's when the serpent distracted and deceived Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. That was probably the first time. God told them not to touch a certain tree in the garden. That was off limits. But they took their eyes off of what God had said and listened to the serpent tell them something differently. They were distracted. I think the book of Daniel, chapter 6, we think of Daniel in the lion's den, the old story about Daniel. Well, if you really look at that study in the book of Daniel, chapter 6, Daniel didn't focus on the lions. They were right there. I think a lot of us say, I'm going to keep my eyes on them so they don't attack me. I'm going to watch. I'm going to just be looking. Instead, Daniel looked to God. He prayed. He took time out to pray. In 2 Corinthians 12, verse 7 through 10, Paul mentions about another distraction. A thorn in the flesh, he says. A distraction that he did not really dwell on it. We don't really know what that distraction is, what it was. Was it a person? Was it an ailment? That's what I'm thinking it was. It was something that maybe bothered him physically. But it was something that bothered him. It was a distraction, but he didn't dwell on it. Instead, he continued even in the hardest times to serve the Lord. He didn't let it get in his way. Another distraction I can think of, we read in Matthew 14:29, we read that Peter, the disciple, stepped out of the boat to go to see Jesus as he walked on the water. We soon discover that instead of looking at Jesus as he walked towards him, as he got in that water, he didn't even realize what had happened, but he was walking on the water just like Jesus towards him. Then all of a sudden, Peter took his eyes off Jesus and he looked around him, distracted by the waves, the wind, and the rain, and all these things that were going on, the storm that was swirling around him. And all of a sudden, Peter began to sink. And he cried out to Jesus. Why? Because he became distracted from what was around him. So even if we look at it, all those different ones that were distracted, we think of Adam and Eve, we think of Paul, we think of Daniel, we think of Peter. But now, even Jesus was distracted. He was trying to be distracted. In Matthew 4, verses 8 and 9. Let's look at this, because we're going to read about Jesus. As he was trying, somebody was trying to take away from him. Look at this. In verse 8, again, the devil took him up on an exceedingly high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. Verse 9, he says, and he said to him, all these things I will give you if you will fall down and worship me. Wow, Satan came to distract Jesus and to dismiss the whole will of the Father, what he had planned. And Jesus didn't take that. So yes, Jesus even was distracted, or tried to be distracted by Satan. That's what Satan does. Weapons of distraction. And that's what we face more distraction and deception than ever. Really, distractions, to me, are the enemy of actions. Distractions are one of Satan's greatest weapons. He uses it to distract believers for God's good purpose that he wants for us. I've heard the saying, Satan doesn't need to destroy us. He only needs to distract us, because he wins every time when he does that. When we are distracted, we can automatically fall back into the world because we're looking at worldly things. We become worldly Christians. We are warned in Romans 12:2, and I want you to look at this. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Yeah, Satan's goal is to separate us from God and our will for our life. He knows us, he studies us, he sees our weaknesses, and that's how he attacks us. Distraction is the ultimate weapon to separate us from God's purposes for our lives by making us focus on earthly things rather than focusing on him. It is truly a snare of Satan, a vital weapon. Here's a serious question I want to ask you. Can you imagine what the world would be like if we had ignored the distractions that Satan throws in front of us and instead focused on the things of Christ and the job he wants us to do? Can you imagine what this world would be like? How different it would be if every Christian did that? There would be more prayer. There would be more people won for the kingdom. There would be a strong church. Churches, sanctuaries would be filled because Christians were not distracted by Satan. That's what would happen. Satan would really suffer probably his greatest defeat if Christians would only not become distracted by the world. Well, how can we diminish distractions in our lives? It's important to note that distraction will probably never, ever disappear. It will always be with us. And Satan realizes this weapon as a weapon of mass destruction. And there will always be distractions in our lives because we allow them. Hear that? We allow it. Now, there's a difference when Satan came to Jesus to try to distract him and said, all this can be yours, as he was showing him. This can be yours if you'll bow down to me. But Jesus kept his focus on the Father, on the will of the Father. He didn't let Satan take over. If he had it been different. But he didn't. He didn't allow it. And that's what we have to do. We have to fight back. If this is spiritual warfare, which it is, then we need to fight back as never before. Christians have to realize this weapon of mass destruction and distraction is a battle, a war that we are in each and every day. Well, our defense, we need to refocus our attention to what matters most. I want you to look at with this. Colossians 3:2 says, set your affection on things above, not on things of the earth. I like that. We need to focus. Always strive to renew our thoughts and attitudes is another great defense. We read in Ephesians 4:22 and 20 through 24, it says, in reference to your former manner of life, you lay aside the old self, which is being corrupted in accordance with the lust of deceit. In verse 23 it says, and that you be renewed in the spirit of your mind. In 24 it says, and put on the new self, which in the likeness of God has been created in righteousness and holiness of truth. Isn't that wonderful? So we can do it if we will strive with our hearts and our minds to not be distracted. Then another thing, you can set up a defense by praying and seek Him in everything we do. Matthew 6:33 says it very clear. Look at it. It says, but seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. See, if you pray and ask God to help us to ignore, to look away from all the distractions of our lives, He will be there to help us. We really need to treat distractions as a sin for us whenever we're trying to live our life for Christ that is we really should. Don't allow those distractions to come in and pull us away from our time of prayer, from our time of devotions, from our time spending telling others about Christ, from our time of attending church and with fellow believers. This is the focus. This is what we need to focus on and look to Christ as our answer, and He will help us. We need to drown those things out. Focus wholeheartedly on the things that matter the most. And then focus that we need to love God with all of our hearts, our soul, our mind, and strength. Go to Him. Give Jesus first place in our hearts. That is what is important. We're admonished in Proverbs 16:3 to commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans. Will you do that today? Will you commit yourself to the Lord, giving everything to Him, your heart, your mind, and your look to Him? Focus on Christ. Lay aside all the distractions, everything that would hinder you. Put those aside. Instead, focus on Jesus. I hope you'll join us next week as we look into part 2 of this series on weapons of mass distractions. And we're going to talk about 3 ways to fight distractions that can hinder our spiritual growth. And I hope that you'll plan to join us next week at this very same time for our program on this very exciting series. I know you'll enjoy it. Until next week, may the Lord bless and keep you.